Why not?
Yeah.
All for the good.
All to the good is right.
Don't forget to take some extra ice along. It's so hot there.
Yeah, I heard it's 20 degrees in Tel Aviv.
Completely, and it's the Maccabeah games. It's a shame, but anyway, that's how it is.
Okay, so we're going to start in the Mishnah. We're right on time. Okay, we're starting in the Mishnah, and as I pointed out to you, there's going to be the next 3 or 4 dafim are back into Tahara. Taharas, okay. Depends on how.
Favorite subject.
It's been a while since we really.
Well, it depends how
depends
how deeply you want to get into it, I suppose. Okay, but the good news is it's Mishnah to Mishnah. The next Mishnah is Yud Zayin Amud Bet. This is Yud Gimel Amud Bet, and it goes in and out of a number of things that deal with Truma and Tahara and Tuma and everything else and so forth. Some of it's a little esoteric. Some of it does have a purpose and so forth. Let me just give you the background to what
Where are we?
Yud Gimel Amud Bet. It's about a third of the way down, maybe 40% of the way down. There's a Mishnah. Okay. Now, the Mishnah here, okay. The Mishnah here was mentioned to us, was alluded to us, at least the beginning of it, when we were dealing about not reading L'or Haner.
Okay.
Okay. Yud Gimel Amud Bet, right in the middle of the Mishnah. So it would enter in here when they were trying to prove something about the Or Haner, and they quoted this Mishnah. You'd bet somewhere. Let's see if I can find it quickly. Maybe not. Maybe it was a different blot. But anyway, this Mishnah came up, and they were trying to prove Leikra L'or Haner. Yes, it is Yud Bet Amud Aleph. It was quoted, and if you can find it quickly, it's fine. If not, it's not a big deal. About the middle of the page, they were trying to prove whether the idea of reading and taking out lice, whether the issue of lice was an issue of the concern of killing the lice, or you can't delouse by candlelight in the same way you couldn't read by candlelight. So if you look in the middle of the page, they tried to prove it, Toshma. It's pretty much about the first word on the line, and it's about halfway through Tov Shin. Ein Polim L'or Haner ve'ein Koren L'or Haner, and then it says Eileh min Allah Hashem Baliyad Chananya ben Chizkiya ben Gurion. So they brought that our Mishnah goes into the next Mishnah, which we're about to do. That next Mishnah, they tried to prove that the two were connected, and therefore the Or Haner reading is about Or Haner, and Polim delousing with Or Haner. And they thought that was actually a good connection between the two of them, and they both were connected. And the Gemara used that as one of the conclusions to decide one or the other. But that really, this Mishnah we have is really a continuation of the previous Mishnah. So that's how it gets into this topic that's off topic of Masechet Shabbos. Because the previous Mishnah mentioned a whole bunch of things about not the you couldn't go out with the needle before Shabbos, and you couldn't the lavla, the scribe can't go out with his pen right before Shabbos, and also then the second part of the Mishnah talked about things you can't do on Shabbos because you may come to read and move the candle, which was reading and so forth, about the lousing. And then the last piece was also, and then it's apparently the Mishnah that they had went into one of the 18 things that was included in the following Gzeros that we're about to enumerate. Okay, so the 18 Gzeros do not really have to do with Shabbos. This was apparently what they felt was some of those Gzeros, or at least the end of the Mishnah was. Okay. Now, here's what the Mishnah is all about. The Mishnah is going to talk about when the Chachamim went to visit a person by the name of Chananya ben Chizkiya ben Goron, who was stuck up in an attic. Now, it doesn't tell us what he was doing up in this attic, but I'll tell you what it was, because it comes up actually in the Gemara. He was actually trying to explain Sefer Yecheskel and try to reconcile it with halachic normative Judaism. If you read the last 10 chapters or so in Sefer Yecheskel, there are a lot of deviations about Tumah and Tahara, and about the Beis HaMikdash, and about Karbanos, which are very difficult to say that they work. Because we know what the halachas are for the Beis Mikdash when there was a Beis Mikdash, when there was a Mishkan. We know the Karbanos. This seems to be similar, but not the same. And then there probably were concerns about trying to understand the Maseh Merkava, the electrum that's found in Perek Aleph and Sefer Yecheskel, and then later I think it's also Perek Vav a little bit. So this individual, this Talmud Chacham, Chananya ben Chizkiah ben Goran, he decided he was going to write the expose to try to reconcile it. We don't even know what he wrote, okay? But he locked himself up in this attic with garbe shemen, barrels of oil that he could just keep the light burning, and he just kept writing and writing and writing, and for a period of years, and he was all by himself in this hermetic existence. So I guess periodically people would come in to see how he was doing. So this is one of those cases when they came, and what's important, okay, is when they came to see him. This is a very significant period of time. This is the Talmidim of Hillel and Shammai, okay, and Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. This is the Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai people coming in. So they decided when they were there to take a vote, okay, on a number of issues. And you know how it is. I'm sure it is in Parliament here, where they call the vote and people come running from everywhere. Well, they took the vote, and in this day, Beis Shammai outweighed Beis Hillel. So the day was carried, and they made a number of takanos or gzeros that Beis Shammai's opinion was followed and is followed halachically based upon the decisions made on that day.
It's just Mamanot, right? We always follow Beit Shammai anyway, right?
We always follow Beis Hillel. We follow Beis Hillel in 95% of the cases.
Right, but there's one class where we always follow Beit Shammai, right?
I don't know. This is the group.
This might be
This is the
These are the
group.
18 things. These are the 18 things.
Usually went according to Beis Hillel.
Correct. Which normally we follow Beis Hillel, but these are the ones that they decided. The problem with this is not clear what the 18 things were. Okay.
Oh, we don't know.
Okay. So, I mean, it would be nice if this Mishnah had said, and here are the 18 things that were listed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, for some reason, for some reason, there was a whole lot of discussion about Tumah and Tahara, a lot more than we can even fathom in our minds, because we don't really adhere to Tumah and Tahara, except, of course, for Nida and Mace and so forth. So the Gemara assumes, for some reason, I'm not quite sure why they make this leap, that 10 of the 18 items are found in the last Mishnah in Masechet Zavin, Perek Hey, okay, which is going to quote it, and that Mishnah is going to be quoted on the bottom of Yud Gimel Amud Bet. We're going to come to it today, okay. Those 10 items are really about Tumah and Tahara, okay. I even actually, I did a handout from the art scroll because they try to have a good introduction to what they are. Then after the Gemara tries to explain why they made these gzeros, that's going to be the next discussion. What you got 10 of them. What were they worried about? What were they worried about that you would, if you did this and did this and did this? Then after the Gemara finishes this, that takes about two amudim, the Gemara then says, okay, now we know 10, what were the other 8?
Right.
Okay? And they go one by one through the other 8, and actually they find they have different variations. One person says this, and one person doesn't say this, so in the end, if you said this, then you wouldn't say that to equal it out up to 18, or you would merge 2 of them together. But at the end of the day, you got to work out 18 different things. So don't be excited about what are exactly the 18, because there really isn't a final list that's found in a Mishnah or anything else. The closest list we have is these 10 in Masechet Zavin, so 10 out of the 18 we're going to know. Okay, that's the good news. The bad news is 10 of the 18 are all about Tumah and Tahara. Okay? The good news is Archgal actually wrote a Tumah and Tahara about Truma. Okay, so it's a little more complicated. But so there's a historical milieu about Hanani ben Chizkiah ben Goren trying to explain Yecheskel, and there's a historical halachic significance that they came to visit him and they voted in favor of Beit Shammai that day. Okay, so anyone that tries to understand how Machloksim developed and what was the process of Masorah is going to refer inevitably to this Mishnah, which unfortunately is not that clear. Doesn't really tell us how they sat down. Say what they, why did they call?
To visit the poor guy.
Right, and suddenly they said, "Okay, we have a quorum. It's time. Let's cast a vote." Okay? And you've all been to situations where you have meetings and you're supposed to bring a motion. Something comes up, right? And the motion gets deferred, and the next time the people are different, and it changes everything.
This is a perfect example of democracy at work, or there's a pasuk in the Torah that says you go according to Rav, right?
Yes.
So
correct.
they follow halacha.
Correct. Right. So The question is, why was it like a setup? It looks like a setup. The Talmud Bavli SHABBAT, they said, let's overload the boat and make sure we have more people than Beis Hillel. So
we'll tell everybody we're just going to visit.
The question that you have to ask, and I don't have the answer. The question you have to ask is, it means on one particular day it was 51 to 49. The next day would be 49 to 51. What happens? I mean, the halacha changes. I mean, what does this mean? But that's really when you come up with a decision, that really becomes a decision. I mean, I think probably if we don't have this formal process today, unfortunately, we don't have a centralized body. There is no Sanhedrin, there is no Beis Medrash. Every group has their own Rav and their own leader, and you know that inevitably there will be something new comes up. There'll be some people say you can, some people say you can't, some people say it's a mitzvah, some people say it's an avera, right? Back and forth. But inevitably, over the course of time, and that's the best that we have, over the course of time, people will finally say that this is acceptable. Right? In other words, I guess maybe a good example is the Shabbos clocks. When Shabbos clocks were first invented, right, in the late 50s or early 60s, I can't remember, and they were humongous types of timers, humongous boxes, and there were people who said you couldn't use it because it was Morris iron, right? Because people think lights are going off, lights are going on. There was people who said you shouldn't use them.
Yeah, Moshe is a tshuva.
Yes, he's one of those that you shouldn't use it. But I think over the course of time, clearly the predominance of poskim says, sure, you should use it. Everybody understands that timers are timers, right? And that's how halacha moves along. But it's a long process. It's a long process, as opposed to the time of the Talmidei Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, where they could take a vote and say one way or the other. Yes.
The fact that Beis Hillel normally the person according to Beis Hillel, is that because they took a vote every time there was a disagreement?
I guess so. I guess either that or they jumped party lines.
Were there more of them? That's a good question.
That's what I'm saying. That's the part you have to ask yourself. What does that mean? So it means we follow Beis Hillel because there must be more Beis Hillel than Beis Shammai people. Beis Shammai people weren't clever enough to kind of gerrymander or bring other people in.
Yeah, no, but it sounds more like what you said. At the time, maybe nobody had decided, and maybe it was only later when it was accepted that Beis Hillel's view was a more acceptable view.
Right. Yeah, the other part is we know all about the machloksim. There's more non-machloksim than there are machloksim. I don't want you to think you're walking every day in a Beis Medrash and they go here, whatever they say, right? And call the roll, okay? There were times that Hillel and Shammai, or Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, would argue back and forth, and they would finally agree on something, or they would say, "You're right, we'll follow this opinion," right? So.
This is not the Beis Medrash. This is just some guy's attic.
But they can.
You know what I mean?
It's even hard to understand what this means in attic. An attic is literally what it was.
What I mean is, you'd go to, they have a Beis Medrash, and there's the boat.
So
that was the place. But then here it's in an attic.
It's not a basin, it's just a take. That's right. Yeah, that's why it looks like they overnumbered them. The Beis Shammai looks like they set up to have more than Beis Hillel.
It's just odd that they would do it at that place, not at whatever the assigned place.
So in fact, the Gemara will actually say that when they argued about this, and they decided about it, later on they all agreed that this was the right decision. So, because you'll see there'll be a Nimnu v'Gamru, or Machlok Huchlaku, and then there's Hushvu. So the Gemara will kind of include that when we get to like about Tedvav or something like that. But it looks like it's, they call the roll. The Elohein, let's go into the Mishnah, then we'll go into the Gemara. Elohein, Elo min halacha sha'amu b'aliyad B'chananya ben Chizkiah ben Goran, she'alo levakros. And these are, remember, see the Mishnah says ve'elu, right? Yeah. And these are, so this is including, in other words, the previous ones, which you talked about, lo yifalet kelav leikol ol haner, and these are, right, one of that were included in those days. That's actually what the Gemara is going to just say. Okay. I'm sorry, I skipped a line. Shamru be'aliyat Chananya ben Chizkiah ben Goran, sha'alu levakra. They went up to visit him. Nimnu v'ravu Beit Shammai Beis Hillel. They decided about, there were more Beis Shammais against Beis Hillel. V'yirched dvarim gazu b'bayom. And besides this halacha that they decided, that may have actually been unanimous to make a decision at that point about not reading L'Or Haner or not delousing by the Or Haner, there were also 18 things that they made gzeros on that point, and Beis Shammai's opinion carried the day. Okay. Okay, so far so good. That's the easy mission. I mean, it's not clear because it would be easier if I had just listed the 18 things. Amalei Abai Rav Yosef, Elutnan o ve'elutnan. Now the Gemara's first question here from Abai Rav Yosef, what is the actual text? Is it Elu ve'elu, right? So Elutnan o ve'elutnan, ve'elutnan hani de Amran. Is ve'elu including the previous ones? O elutnan, the bin l'meim l'kamar. Or when it says these are, it's not about what happened before. Right? It's really about what we're about to read the next line. So Gemara says, Toshman, this was the same question that was, the same brisa that was asked or quoted on Yud Bet. Ein polim lo arner ve'ein koren lo arner. V'elu min halacha shem b'vayad Chananya ben Chizkiah ben Goren. Okay? So in other words, that the text of this brisa, which was quoted once again in Yud Bet, kind of puts them together. We have them, looks like they're separate mishnayos. And after, and by the way, in our order, we have the Mishnah talks about ein polim and ein korim, and then it talked about other things as well. It talked about the Melamed can't read as well, it's only Rashi Prakim. Then it talked about the Zav can't eat with the Zav on the little card table. Right? Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, so and nonetheless, this brisa had just ve'elu connecting the two together. So therefore, it's ve'elu. That's really, and that makes sense why this whole thing is put here, because otherwise it's really a whole discussion in the Mishnah that doesn't belong in Masechet Shabbos. It belongs in Masechet Zavin. You'll see. Okay, Tana Rabbanan. Okay, new brisa. Mikos of Megillas Tanit. Who wrote Megillah Tanit? We've once mentioned Megillah Tanit.
Yes, yeah.
Megillah Tanit is a listing of
all the times that they had at the second Beit
Were no longer applicable.
but they're not fast days. All the days that you cannot fast.
Sorry, yes, you're right.
All the days you cannot fast.
The minor holidays.
Minor holidays, and they all have. There was one or two reasons why they're all listed. By the way, listed in there is Chanukah and Purim. Okay, so those obviously have remained. But otherwise, they tend to be either holidays that celebrate victories over Romans and Greeks, right, when they wanted to stop us doing this and stop us doing that, which, by the way, the Chanukah story is one of those, and the Purim story is one of those. The other group that really comes up here is when the Prushim were able to overpower against the Tzdukim. And ensure the continuation of what we call today normative halacha, what is our Torah Sheba'al Peh. The Tzdukim had a different system, which was only Torah Shebachsav. The Tzdukim tended to be the more affluent, the more influential. They tended many times to be able to buy the kahuna, the Kohen Gadol. And as a result, there was always a concern, because they were often better closely allied with the Roman authorities, that they could kind of keep control of the Beis Mikdash and of the halach and so forth. So every time they kind of were able to defeat the Tzdukim, they said, we'll make a holiday. What's the holiday mean? You couldn't fast, or you couldn't fast and you couldn't give eulogies. There are days you can't give eulogies, there are days you can't give eulogies and you can't fast. Not fasting is a greater happiness than just not giving eulogies. And yes, fasting, right, okay? So, or yes, being able to fast. So, Yud Gimel Amud Bet. So Gemara says, who wrote this? Like, what do we know about this? Where did this listing actually come from? What we have Megillas Tanit, by the way, today has really two parts to it. The scholars use the term scolio, which is like the the shulayim. If you read Megillas Tanit, it lists the days and it's in Hebrew. And then the Hebrew will say very shortly what happened. And then many times there's an expansion upon it in Aramaic. So many times they feel that what we have is Megillas Tanit, which you can have a couple of paragraphs about each holiday. The actual paragraphs are taken from other sources and stuck into Megillas Tanit. Not to say they're wrong, right? But in other words, they will put in, may take sources from the Gemara, may take sources from Midrashim. But you'll see clearly the difference where you've got this Hebrew part, like Mishnah and Gemara almost. Like Mishnah is basically in Hebrew, Gemara is basically in Aramaic. So you see that you have this kind of combination.
So we have this text?
We have this text. We have the text called Megillas Tanit.
It's at the back.
It was printed in the back of Steinsaltz's Masechet Tanit.
When we studied Tanit,
right.
I had it right in the middle of my...
Right. There are, it's definitely available, a number of editions. It's not normally studied today because, first of all, it's like reading a calendar. Right? Because every month has a whole bunch of holidays, and they're not that relevant. They're mostly historical holidays, or they're mostly Sukkim and Prushim holidays that have history related to them. And except for Chanukah and Purim, they've all been put aside. First of all, after Chanukah and Purim, after the Churban Beis HaMikdash, these days were not celebrated or commemorated. First of all, there were no Stukim. Stukim die out. Stukim is a sect. All these different sects from Second Temple times actually fall by the side, except for Christianity.
There's no Tzedukim left?
There are no Tzedukim left. There are
Karaites.
There are Karaites. Karaites surfaced in the 8th, 9th century. They may be similar. There's a very small group of Karaites, correct. There are Samaritans, which are older than us, perhaps, or as old as us. I should say not older than us, but there are no Tzedukim. The idea of these sects, which were all centered around the Beis HaMikdash, really kind of falls out when there's no Beis HaMikdash. The beauty is, I'm saying it was the 3 weeks, not the beauty, but I'm saying the innovation was we were able to kind of come up with a way to make Judaism work, which is Torah Shabbat Peh, and apply it in situations that were very different the days of Beis HaMikdash. It's cataclysmic. I mean, tonight is Shavas B'Tammuz, excuse me.
Right.
So the whole laws, the whole traditions change, right?
Absolutely.
And the people couldn't imagine it actually was not going to come back for like the first Beis HaMikdash came back after 70 years. They were redeemed. So they're waiting, and nothing's happening. Right? They don't know what to do. So there's this tremendous trauma, and we managed. We're here, right? We toughed it out. The Tzdukim couldn't make the transition, so they just die out. The only ones who made the transition, I told you, is Christians, the early Nazarenes. Why? Because they realized that the Jews are not going to listen. The Jews got a better system, so who do? So Paul goes to the Gentiles. He starts spreading. He says they're not going to listen to my message, so let's kind of find someone else. And v'kachava. So in comparison to paganism, Christianity is a whole bunch of steps up. And they were successful, and the world was able to hear their message. That's what happens, and that's why Christianity is a missionizing sect, including against Jews. So anyway, Mikasa Megillas Tanya. So who wrote this? So Amru. So they say Hananya ben Chizkiah v'Siyato, that the same guys who were writing, who were doing this expose about Yechezkel, they also edited and compiled all these different halachas of these special days. Why? They wanted to emphasize all the troubles we had. In other words, we don't have if we wanted to mark every sad day in the Jewish calendar today,
wouldn't have any day to celebrate.
There'd be no day to celebrate. It's correct.
Absolutely. Means they
made love. They emphasized. They liked. They were embraced. They embraced the tzaras. So they wanted to keep a record of all the tzaras that they were victorious on. Right. Obviously, but I'm saying at the same time you're remembering all the sad moments, the different travails that were going on, and therefore, and of course, what's trying to understand at this point is why perhaps in the later days of the Gemara, they're no longer keeping these holidays, right? Chanukah and Purim, we understand Chanukah and Purim. Purim was a almost destruction of the entire Jewish people. Chanukah has a nace that's associated with it. Right? These laws that are mentioned, these days that are mentioned, don't have a nace. General dies. There's a battle. We win. Right? There's nothing as emphatic as the candles burning for 8 days. So, and Rav Shimon Gamliel, and then Rav Shimon Gamliel says, this is all, once again, looking after the debate, after Churban Beis HaMikdash, Af anu mechaben satzaros, okay, you know what? We also have this Lack-a-Morse kind of approach to Jewish history. We also embrace the tzaros. Judaism is all about difficult moments, right? Every holiday we have is about a difficult moment. We were in Egypt, we almost didn't make it, right? We were in Babylonia, etc., etc. But what can we do? If we would kind of write down and keep all the tzaros we have, ein anu maspikim. Okay, we would never be able to sell. We'd never get through life. Okay, every day would be a different sad day. Okay, right? Think about it. Think about for a moment. You got 3 weeks, right? You have Sfiras Omer. Okay, what's left, right? I mean, if we think about all the difficult, right? You have days like Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah. So I mean, there's a serious Seres Tshuva. These are all now the difference between the 3 weeks and Sfiras Omer and Seres Tshuva. These are all somber days, So yeah, we do it because of what if we look at every series every day, we wouldn't be able to. By the way, this is a whole concept of whether you should make special days of mourning or put them all on Tisha B'Av. Right? Correct?
Just put them on Tisha B'Av.
For the Holocaust especially, right? Do you choose this unique days, for example, the Yom HaShoah, right? Yom HaShoah V'Gvura, or the Haredi world has chosen Asar B'Teves, right, which they take very seriously, by the way, or Tisha B'Av is what we include everything with. The kinos, many of the kinos have to deal with other destructions, right, and we include the kina for the Holocaust, which is of course from our generation or previous generation. So Davar Acher. Another interpretation. Why is it that we don't keep Megillas Tanis? Why do we not keep a record of every sad day and commemorate it? So Ein Shot Nifka, that a fool doesn't know when he's really got hit. Okay, a nar doesn't understand when he's being beaten up. Okay, he thinks he's being successful. So not that we can't survive if we would look at all the sad days. We just don't even understand how bad things are. Right, we're fools. We think we're successful in life. We think HaKadosh Baruch Hu think things are good, but really we live in a world that's so fickle. Davar Acher, another interpretation: Ein basar hameis margish beizemel. Okay, that dead skin or dead flesh or the flesh of a dead person doesn't feel the knife. In other words, we are so attuned, we are so closed and insensitized or desensitized to all that goes around, we don't even realize another issue that comes up. Right? We live Baruch Hashem in a very lovely galus, correct? But people lived 150 years ago in Russia. I don't know, talking about the Holocaust. We talk about the Holocaust, but there was destructions and persecutions in every generation. I don't know. I don't know how people lived in the early 1800s in Russia with the Cantonists, when they would chop the kids. Right? You have to look out every day. Someone's going to grab your kids, and the kid is gone for 25 years. Right? And these kids would come back. They would take them between 12 and 18, and they were gone for maybe 35 years, 25 or 35 years, and they come back when they're 40, and they knew nothing, and they were subject to all kinds of missionizing in the Tsar's army, and few of them were able to keep mitzvos. Right. So the question of I think the Chayadam. What happened? There was a question: which mitzvah should a person be able to keep? He's given permission to keep one mitzvah, and he came to ask the question: which one should he keep? Should he keep this one? Should he keep Shabbos? Should he keep Yom Kippur? He was given one day to keep the mitzvahs, but that was an exception to the rule. So the Chayadim, I believe, says to try to keep the one that only you can do and others can't do as well. You have to look. I'll try to give you back an answer.
I think you're right.
All right. Anyways, but I'm saying it's a whole different time. We have one churban after another. So, but we live in this kind of society, and you can imagine this is probably being written in the Roman era. Right? This is whatever this discussion. Things were really terrible. Bar Kokhba, post Bar Kokhba. Yeah, okay. Then they want to kill us, but Baruch Hashem, we live in Canada. Correct, so far. Right now.
They want to kill us spiritually.
Yeah, no, here we want to kill ourselves spiritually, correct.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the three answers. One is that we have too many tzaros, so we can't begin to enumerate them. The second one is we're fools. We don't even understand how serious the situation. The third one is we're so desensitized from all the troubles we have, we don't realize the knife is cutting us. Ana Ismail, what's the pasuk? And Basar Meis Margish Be'Ismail. So only Gemara has one kind of question here. This is a typical Gemara question. Is this really true that the Basar HaMeis doesn't really feel the knife? Amar of Yitzchak, Rabbi Yitzchak says this is like a Gemara question. Kasha Rima Lameis Kamachad Babasar Achai. The worm, when the worm comes in and eats its way through the body, it's as painful as you take a needle into your skin alive. Shenemar, it's a pasuk from Eov. Ach besari olav yichaev v'nashov olav tochel. Okay, his basar, his flesh will be in pain, and his soul above it will be as his soul is eaten. So in other words, is that a what? Tovel, I'm sorry. V'nav shalom, tovel or teovel. Okay. Teoval. Okay, so the nefesh will be mourning while the basar is in pain. The basar is in pain. We think it's lying in the ground, but everything that goes in there is about, right, worms. I once had a woman say to me that she did not want to be buried in the ground. Seriously, many years ago. She wanted to be buried in a crypt because she was afraid of the worms.
Okay. There are some people that still want.
Okay, malach tasais, right? But that's what the Gemara is saying. Is actually we don't even know what it means.
This asmal, I believe it's also the same word for the knife of a moil.
Yes, yes.
On the seventh day, should use mila.
Eighth day.
Excuse me, on the eighth day, Aleph and Zion.
Oh, well, that's a good gematria.
Yeah.
What's the answer? Can you bury in a crypt?
No, you can't be buried above ground.
Don't they bury above ground Eretz Yisrael?
They put ground. They put ground there.
Eretz Yisrael, they bury you in a parking garage. Okay.
Right.
An old parking garage.
They do. They put dirt in on layer on top of layer. That's what it is. But the heter is first
Connects maybe or something.
The heter is it's all connected.
Yes, for sure.
Think of a parking garage going around. Instead of having concrete, you have concrete that has earth in it. That's the heter. I don't understand how one day this is not all going to fall down. I can't imagine this.
It'll rot out eventually. Concrete.
But anyways, that's what they do for example, on Har HaMenuchos.
There are people who want to be buried down in vaults.
So the vaults is a separate issue. The vaults are an issue. Are done for one of two reasons. There could be water or ground instability, correct? Or they could be done because the cemetery wants to just make sure that it looks nice. Because eventually, what happens to every grave, the coffin cracks under the weight of the earth, and it falls, and you have to kind of straighten it out. When you put a vault, you keep it there. Now, there are people who want to be in vaults because they don't want to be in the ground. As far as I know, there are some cemeteries in the city that use vaults. Beth Tzedek Cemetery has vaults across the street from Bathurst Lawn. I don't believe any of the Orthodox, I'm sure none of the Orthodox cemeteries have vaults. The heter for using a vault, and I don't even want to say it's a heter, the reason that people may consider it is because concrete is really made of earth and stones, right? It's just hardened. It's hardened. We don't identify with it earth because it ain't moving, right? But that's what really makes concrete. So therefore, if you're being buried in the ground, so you're being buried in a concrete vault. But if the purpose is really to kind of ensure that you don't decay, because you don't want to be in the earth, that's a bad reason. If it happens to be that it's such a difficult situation where there's water, and that's the only way to kind of make the cemetery viable, then maybe there's a heter. We don't have water in our cemeteries. I've seen where there's water in cemeteries. It's very difficult. I've seen it in the springtime when the water table goes up and they throw the dirt in and you don't hear thud, you hear splash, and it's a very unnerving sound. Okay, it's in Chicago, right? Yes, and you got to keep the coffin down; it doesn't float. Correct. You put the dirt on top.
What do you call a vault? You define a vault.
A vault is a box. A vault is a big box. It's a
concrete box.
A concrete box, and then they put a vault lid on top.
Oh, it's not like different rooms or whatever.
No, it's like a single big coffin. Let's say
because
concrete.
Because you saw there's an ancient grave below Rome where they have the bones in.
That's those ossuaries is completely separate. Okay, right. Anyway, so that's what it is. Okay, at any rate, so the Gemara says you see that the mace does feel the knife. It feels the worm is going to feel the knife too. So the Gemara says aim up. So here's what you have to interpret: Ein basar hameis shebachai margish beizmel. That dead, if a person has a gangrene, where the flesh itself is dead on the human being who's alive, right? That doesn't feel the knife, right? Because the nerve endings are completely dead. Okay, that's what it means. That makes sense. Okay.
That's what Rabbi Yitzchak meant.
That's what Rabbi Yitzchak meant. No, that's why in a basar hameis margish beizmel is talking about a living person. The dead skin doesn't feel anything. Okay.
So therefore, Rabbi Yitzchak's not right because the dead skin.
So Rabbi Yitzchak is talking about a dead person.
Right.
For the deceased, right? He would feel the worm. Now, what does it mean? He would feel the worm. It means that somehow there's some kind of pain for the neshama or the nefesh that's hovering over this, seeing the deterioration of the actual bodies. I mean, if dead flesh on a living person doesn't feel, how can dead flesh on a dead person feel? So it means, that's what the Mefarshim say, it refers to actually the pain of separation and what the nefesh watching the body begin to deteriorate. That's what Chazal believe. Okay. I'm Rabbi Yehuda Marav. Baram Zachar. Now here's about the story about Yechezkel. That person, the person we're about to tell you, should be remembered for good. V'chananya ben Chizkiah shmo, shilmolehu nigna sefer Yechezkel. If not for him, they would have buried, they would have put in Geniza, they would have taken out of circulation, they would have taken out of the canon Sefer Yechezkel, shayidvar sosim divrei Torah, because there are many things in Yechezkel which argue against the Torah. Right? For example, it says in Yechezkel that Nevel and Treifa the Kohanim shouldn't eat. The implication is Kohanim can't eat Nevel and Treifa, but if you're not Kohen, everybody else can eat it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so there's some day on the 7th of Tishrei that they commemorate. It's the 7th of Nisan, I recall. So there are a lot of contradictions.
The measurements, I think.
The measurements that race make completely off, but there's some. There are other serious things that really soter contradict whatever we do. So forget the Beis Hamikdash. We don't have a Beis Hamikdash today. So that's one problem. The korbanos are different, and there's certain things in Yechezkel that just don't jive. And nobody really understands why. Beis Hamikdash, by the way, the Beis Hamikdash is probably the easiest thing to understand, because what do we say that the Beis Hamikdash Yechezkel is talking about is about the third Beis Hamikdash, right? And by the way, Yechezkel is, from a we got to be careful how we say this, but from a non-traditional point of view, Yechezkel was not prophesizing from Yerushalayim. He was in Bavel. He may never have seen the Beis Hamikdash, or if he did, it may have been only a quick trip, right? He didn't really sit there and see it like the other Nevi'im did. So therefore, if he is referring to measurements that don't jive with the Beis Hamikdash they knew, right? I said it's not a traditional approach, but at least it would explain why that could happen. Or you say it's the third Beis Hamikdash. I know, well, I agree. So that's why you have to say it's the third Beis Hamikdash. Okay? You have the traditional view, the non-traditional view. Okay?
But if he's a prophet, does it matter if he's experienced such a place?
He ought to get it right? That's correct.
But it's a prophet. It's coming from God. What's the difference?
I agree. I gave you the non-traditional approach. I gave the historical sociological answer, the non-traditional answer. The traditional answer is yes, he's referring to the future Beis Hamikdash, and maybe in the future Beis Hamikdash, it's all going to be a little different, and Karbanos will be different, and we don't know because we're never going to find out until we find the Beis Hamikdash comes, and that's really about the 3 weeks in Tisha B'Av. So you got to pray for the third Beis Hamikdash to come down to find out, which is all going to come from heaven, as we know, right? Gemara talks about coming from heaven. We think we have to build it. People in the Temple Institute are ready to roll out stuff. The actual Beis Hamikdash will roll down. Okay. So what did Chania ben Chizkiah do? Hello, lo gimel me'od garbishim. I said 30. It's 300 barrels of oil. V'yasham b'aliyah v'darshan. He sat up in this attic, and he tried to explain each one of the different contradictions in Sefer Yechezkel, which unfortunately we don't have. Okay. Now, all right, are we ready for this? Okay, good. So I'm going to give you out this handy sheet. Okay, this is right out of Mr. Art Scroll. Those of you who have an Art Scroll can use finding the Art Scroll and just, here you go. Okay, there's 2 sides. And make copies, make sure we have for everybody. Okay. I'm sorry.
2 sides to every story.
There is 2 sides to every story. This is just the Art Scroll. Actually, you have it, right? It's the art, just the page of the Art Scroll. Just look at this. Look how easy it was. I scanned it with my little phone.
Cam scanner?
Cam scanner.
Very good.
It's actually very good. Look how good it is. Wow. This is an advertisement for using Cam Scanner. This is free. Now, if you pay the money, you don't have to get Cam Scanner printed on the bottom. But if you get the cheap version, the no version, then this is
later. On your phone?
It's on my phone.
Oh, like a photo.
But it's better than a photo. It's better than a photo.
It converts it to a JPEG.
It converts it to it converts it to a PDF, and it converts it clearer. And even if you shake the phone, it kind of goes back and do it again.
You download this on your phone?
Yes.
Yeah, cam scanner.
Cam scanner.
Works
Okay.
great.
Works great. Here is the ad. Oh, let's go back in here. So I'm going to use this as footnote 35. It's on 13B3. There's 13B3 and 4. This is all on 35. There's just a little bit on the second page. Okay, so I'd like to spend some time and read it because we're probably going to come back to it again. Introduction to Sugi of the 18 enactments. That's Yud Ches Davar. Okay, so forgive me that I'm using Art Scroll, but it's the best place I could find it. The Sugi of the 18 enactments spreads over the next 4 dapim. Lucky you and me. 12 of the enactments, including the first 9, relate to the laws of Tumah. I guess it's 12. Okay. A short outline of these laws is necessary. Tumah is physically indiscernible ritual contamination that can affect persons, articles, foods, and liquids. You know that. Tumah invariably stems from organic bodies, dead animals, and humans, or live animals who suffer certain diseases or disorders. Example of source of Tumah are, you all know this as well, a human corpse, a mace, an animal carcass, a nevela, carcass of certain specified species of creeping things, sherets, dead shvatzim, not live shvatzim, a zav, this is what we did last week, a man who has a specific type of seminal emission, a nida, right, a woman that's menstruated. Each of these primary sources of tumah, with the exception of the human corpse, the mace, is known as an av hatumah, literally a father of tumah, or in short, just an av. The corpse is by the called avi avot, the father of the fathers, the super father. Okay. And that's what he says in the brackets. Human corpse possess a great degree of tumah and is known as avi avot hatumah, the super father. Tumah is a communicable condition. Okay. And is transmitted by contact from a primary source to a recipient source or object, which in turn becomes a carrier to transmit the tumah further. Upon transmission, however, the tumah generally becomes weakened. This is the first rule. So therefore, if an av touches something, what it touches would normally become a rish. Well, we'd say bet, but it's a rishon. So the highest level is av. The next level is going to be a rishon. You thought it was sheni. I tricked you, right? Okay. The first recipient, and after sheni is going to become, after rishon will become sheni. I'm sorry, and that's as far as it usually goes. When it comes to truma, you can become a shlishi. When it comes to kachim, many times you can actually become almost a ravi. Okay, so that's where this gets a little complicated. So upon transmission, the tumah becomes weakened. The recipient of the tumah is affected with a lower degree of tumah than that of the transmitter. Thus, a person or object contracts tumah from an ava tumah is known as a rishon tumah. That's what you get confused. The recipient is not a second, it's a first. Okay, one who contaminated with the first degree of acquired tumah, or in short, rishon. The rishon on the right column in turn creates a sheni tumah. One contaminated with the second degree of acquired tumah, or in short, sheni. In certain circumstances, the tumah can be transmitted still further, creating a shlishi, third degree, or finally a ravi, a fourth degree of acquired tumah. There is usually no tumah lower than a ravi, a fourth degree. Okay, thus the chain of tumah transmissions runs as follows: runs av, rishon, sheni, shlishi, and ravi. So far, so good.
Yeah.
Okay, because the discussion the Gemara is going to be about sheni and rishon. Okay, and exceptions where it doesn't go to less and it becomes the same thing. There are 4 categories of things that are affected by tumah: A, persons, adam; B, kalim, utensils; C, ochlim; and D, mashkim, liquids. And specifically 7 liquids listed below. And I forget where that's going to list it here.
Note 41.
Note 41 on the other side.
7 specific liquids are
right. If you want to go on 41 on the other side, it's grape wine, right? Honey, bees honey, olive oil, milk, dew, blood, and water. These can become tameh. So we told you what you saw is where we had something, the water came down and touched something, right? So now it can become tameh. So that's where that comes up. But there are other liquids as well that we normally don't think about. Okay, so we have what are the 4 from a person, kalim, ochlim, and mashkim. Okay. By the way, just as an aside, you're going to see in the Gemara when we come to it that when you eat, you usually have ochlim and mashkim together, don't you? Mm-hmm. Right. So, how many of you eat your food dry? Very rarely. Now, you may drink, right? But while you're drinking, you may want to eat something as well, right? Have a little snack. Okay, hit the fridge, and you take a little cold water and say, oh, well, I got cold water, have a little, who will know? So, by biblical law, the first 2 categories, persons and articles, can contract tumah from an ava tumah only. Okay, here's what gets complicated. So, according to the Torah, Adam and Kalim can only get tumah from an ava tumah. In other words, they can become tameh only in the degree of rishon, but no lower. Okay, Tful Yom is an exception, the see below. Okay, only foods and liquids can become a sheni. Okay, so food and liquid can become sheni, shlishi, or ravi, i.e. tamei in the second, third, and fourth degree. Even with respect to foods and liquids, you guys are still with me? A distinction is drawn between unconsecrated items, chulin, and those which are consecrated, namely truma, right, which is given to kohanim, or even holier, the even holier kachim, which is sacrificial food. For the holier a thing, the more sensitive it is to tumah. So therefore, normally, if it's really not truma, it's only going to go as far as a sheni. Right? It can't go below that. There is one level, and I don't know if he talks about. I'll say anything, and I won't say anything when we finish it. Thus, foods and liquids that are unconsecrated are susceptible to the sheni degree of tumah, but no lower. Truma can go to the shlishi degree and no lower, and only kachim can be affected with ravi degree of tumah. Thus, if for instance chulin comes into contact with a sheni, it remains tahar. Chulin is non-truma and non-kachim. Similarly, when truma comes into contact with a shlishi or kachim with a ravi, they remain tahar. So it can only go 2 levels, right? For food and ochlim and mashkim. For truma, go 3 levels. For kachim, it goes for 4 levels. In short, by biblical law, this is all according to Torah law. Right. And the Torah is not very clear. This is all the Torah law that we understand by the oral law. In short, by biblical law, persons and articles can be no less than rishon. Foods and liquids that are chulin no less than sheni. Truma is no less than shlishi, and kachim no less than ravi. There is an opinion that tumah on ravi sort of derives from rabbinical law. Okay, it's not important. Reciprocally, anything tamei that has the capacity to impart its tumah and contaminate even persons and articles is graded as an afatuma. Okay, so I'll read that again. Anything that's tamei that has the capacity to impart its tumah to contaminate persons and articles is called an avatuma, although in fact, it's not a primary source.
Let's go over that again. This is what give an example.
Anything that's tamei that has the capacity to impart its tumah and contaminate even persons and articles, adam and kalim, is called an avatuma. So there are 4 different categories. There's adam and kalim, which can only go to the first level, right? Which only gets from an av. Then we have ochlim and mashkim, which can get from a rishon to become a sheni. They can be made a sheni. So by definition, okay, there are things, and this is where the Rabbanan will come in by rabbinic law, that can be metame, adam, and kalim, even though they're not really the avatuma, but they're going to be called and considered an avatuma. This is where it gets very complicated. Yeah. Reciprocally, I'll read again. Anything tamei that has the capacity to impart tumah and contaminate persons and articles is graded as an avatuma, although in effect it's not a primary source. It may be a rishon, but Chazal we're going to consider this as an av to be metame, adam, and kalim. As will become apparent in the ensuing Gemara, there are many cases where tamei objects can contaminate persons and articles by rabbinic law. That's where the rabbinic law, the Yud Ches Devarim, is going to come up. These were rabbinic extensions.
Right. So even though they agreed that the Raisa, these weren't the problem.
Correct. But they're going to say now an Adam and a Kalim can become Tamei, even though the object that is giving them Tumah is a Rishon. The Chazal came along to say we're going to consider that they become Tamei. Normally they have to have a real Avatuma. That we're going to say this Rishon can give it to Adam and Kalim. But the moment that we work with that premise, the giver is no longer considered a rishon. What do we call it? We're going to call it an av. Right? So by definition, if in other words, it's a kind of sounds a little convoluted logic. Normally, Adam and Kalim can only get from an avatuma to make them a rishon. There are some cases where they can get from a rishon that will make them also a rishon or a sheni.
Why did Chazal do that?
That's what the discussion tomorrow is going to be. Okay, right?
They're very busy.
Okay, what you have to just by the way, this is not the whole thing is not as complicated as this. It's just this first beginning about these Yud Ches Devarim is complicated. There are 3-4 amudim of Tumah and Tahara, but this is really like stuff that we're not even used to. Okay. This idea that suddenly Chazal came along and now bumped up the giver to the Adam and Kalim, which was a Rishon, but the fact that it can give to an Adam and Kalim, we're now going to we're going to bump up the giver as well.
Once they decided that it could.
In other words, you would normally say an Adam can only get from an Av.
Right.
So now we're going to say in this case, even though this is a rishon, it's going to give it to an adam and a kalim. So, but we don't, you know, I say, well, then the adam and kalim becomes a sheni. No, this becomes a rishon, which means the giver, even though the giver was a rishon, we have to consider the giver now to be an avatuma. That's what's going on. Two things are being bumped up. If you bump up the recipient, the adam and kalim, you have to bump up the giver, whatever that object is.
Every tuma a giver?
I'm sorry?
Isn't every tuma a giver?
It depends if it gets it from itself. If it touches a corpse, for example, or a person becomes tameh, or a person becomes a zav, right? Then they touch someone, then the person is once down,
Below.
right?
And then that person touches someone else, they're below.
They're below that, correct. So there are people who are tameh by themselves, right? All right, where are we up to? Okay, as will become apparent in Suin Gemara, you know that's trouble right away. There are many cases where tamei objects can contaminate persons and articles by rabbinic law, though the objects are contaminated only by an acquired tumah. Nevertheless, because their power of contamination is equal to that of primary tumah, they are given the appellation avatuma. So avatuma will be given to anything that can make an adam kalim tamei, right? And because they can only because adam and kalim can only become rishon. Similarly, anything tamei that has only the capacity to contaminate contaminate truma kachim, but is innocuous as regards to chulin, is graded as sheni. Although in fact the chain of tumah transmission, it may be a rishon or even an av, as I'll give examples below. So in other words, what it's trying to tell you here is that we're not just changing the types of the amount of tumah that can be received, we're changing the name of the giver. So if you decide that the recipient is going to become a sheni, the giver is going to become a rishon, regardless of what it really is. The terms are being, I don't want to say used loosely, but used in a relative term. Okay? So we're keeping the premise that the giver gives the recipient something lower. Persons or most articles can be cleansed from the tumah by a purification process which includes tefillah and the mikvah. After tefillah, person or article is tahar in respect to chulin and also ma'aser sheni. Whereas regards to truma, the tahara is complete only after sunset following tefillah. It's called harav shemesh. So for truma and kachim as well, you have to wait until the sun goes down after going to the mikvah. During the waiting period from tefillah until sunset, and by the way, the people from Tuma went to the mikvah in a day. Okay, we used to women going at night. During the waiting, think of going to the mikvah like Erev Rosh Hashanah. During the waiting period from tefillah until sunset, the personal article is known as a teful yom. So teful yom is a person who went to mikvah, who is still waiting for the sun to go down, who they can eat chulin, but they cannot eat truma or kachim, so they can't go into the Beis HaMikdash yet. The practical difference of tumah is with regard to holy matters only. For example, tamei persons or objects are not allowed in the confines of a temple. Furthermore, consecrated foods such as ma'aser sheni, truma, and kachim all have to be protected from tumah contamination. If they do contract tumah, they become unfit for consumption. On the other hand, unconsecrated foods that is tamei may be eaten. Similarly, the tumah of an unconsecrated object is not at all curtail its use for profane purposes. Significance of tumah of unconsecrated objects, food and objects is that they can act as carriers to impart their tumah to consecrated foods and also inhibit their entry into the tumah compound. So if I had food that became tamei, I could eat it, right? Prushim may not want to eat it, right? The person was very careful. A chaver don't want to eat it, but I could eat it. But at the same time, if it is tamei, then I may come into contact with the next level and make the next level to a tamei as well, etc., etc. Okay, so that's there we have an introduction. Are you more confused? No, it gives you at least some general
where they're heading.
General parameters. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we're up to Shmona. So we're on the Gemara 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 lines in the bottom. Okay, Ushmona Asar Davar Gazru. Mainin Hushmona Asar Davar. So unfortunately, I told you the Mishnah didn't list for us the 18 objects. The Gemara says, what are the 18? So it's going to give you this list now from Mishnah Zavin, Perek Hey, it's the last Mishnah, depending on your Mishnah. It's either Mishnah Yud or Mishnah Yud Bet. Titznan. Elu Poslim Es HaTruma. Okay, the following objects listing here, and the 10 things that are listed in this Mishnah are going to make Truma become possible when they come into contact with it. So, in other words...
You have to throw out the Truma? You have to throw it out? burn it
You
or
have to
something?
burn it, yes, correct. Yes, truma can, that's right. Correct. That's why you'd want to be careful that you don't come into contact with it. You can't eat it. It's gone.
And nobody can eat
No,
it.
no, but only the
Nobody
Kohen
can.
could eat in the first place.
Right, only the Kohen could eat it.
But you
Correct.
took away his food,
You
basically.
probably have to pay.
Correct.
So-
Well, yes, you took away his food, but also it's like, yeah, but you have to view this as like if some chicken dropped into your milk, you throw out the milk, or vice versa, milk dropped into your chicken soup, you throw it out. You explain that to someone who doesn't know kashrus, they think you're crazy.
Yeah.
See, one little drop, you're throwing it out. Well, you can't even see it, right? Well, maybe it is bottle. Okay, let's say it's more than a drop, right?
Cook flesh chicks and milk experiments.
Yeah.
Correct.
But tuma is with mashvah, right?
Yeah. Yes. Correct. With maga, we're touching. It's touching. It's contamination by touching. It's not even like tom. It's not like tom. It's not like getting mixed in. So it's not the same thing as kashrus. Simply by touching. Right? So ela poslim as a truma. Ela is poslim as a truma. Ha'ochel rishon, v'ochel sheni. Okay. So if you eat food that's a rishon l'tuma, so if you eat food that's a rishon, what do you become? The food was a rishon l'tuma. Let's say this food touched a dead body,
Right.
or food touched
Right, no,
sherets,
Okay, touch the sherets and you ate it now.
and now I ate it. So the food became a rishon. Food was a rishon,
But now it's in me though. It's inside of me.
and now that I touched it,
I touched
right?
it.
So what do I become? I become like a sheni, right?
Sheni.
So I become a sheni. So I would now, if I now touch truma, I would make the truma tameh, right? The ochel sheni, and a person who eats food that is a sheni. Okay, so here Chazal came along, and they said that if I eat food that's a sheni, will still become a sheni. That's part of this gezerah that they're coming along to make at this point, that I should really be lower than that.
Right, it should be a shlishi.
Be a shlishi, but they're going to say that I'm going to become still still a sheni. Okay. Okay. And even right. Okay. So ochel rishon ochel sheni v'ashosem mashkim tmeim, and a person who drinks liquids that are tamei. These are the 7 liquids we mentioned. V'haba rosho v'ruba b'mayim shuvim, and a person who goes into water that was shuvim is drawn, right, as opposed to rainwater. So he takes a shower, or he takes a bath in mayim shuvim. Now, what does that mean? I'm going to become tamei. What did I do wrong?
Well, Tomei for going into the base of Mikdash, I guess.
Why? Why I'm tahar?
I'm hard to start with. You're saying.
Right. These are all gezeros. These are all gezeros that really shouldn't be anything wrong with them.
Sure.
Right? It's not, the water is simply water that I drew it from the lake, or I pulled it up from a well and put it in a bucket. Why would that make me tamei? So you'll see there was a special reason why they made this gezerah. Okay. I know it sounds counterintuitive taking a shower. Vitar, so this is about Bal Rosh of Rub Maim Shuvim. Vitar Shanaflu Al Rosh of Rubo Shlosh Lugim Maim Shuvim. And similarly, a person who's tahar, who took all this water poured on his head, and this is water you cannot use in the mikvah. So you're going to see I just tell you briefly, it has to do with going into the mikvah to try to prop up people why they would want to go to the mikvah. We'll leave the actual discussion, but this is
encourage people to go to the mikvah by saying the others are good.
Right, or that's correct. Okay, so that's, I forgot how many that is already. So it's Tarsh Nafal Rosh of Rubo Shlosh Lugim Maim Shuvim. The next one is Vasefer. So a sefer is a book, a holy book, Torah,
Right.
Tanakh, makes me tamei. Okay. Now this sounds like counterintuitive. So to be a Talmid Chacham means you're going to become tamei, or it means that before you go to Beis Hamikdash you have to become tahar. Right. So you'll see why Chazal made this rule, why they made the rule that. Sorry.
We learned something.
We learned about this.
sefer.
Okay, so we learned about this in Masechet Megillah many moons ago. Because they wanted to put the Gemaras, put the Tanakhs and Torahs in a safe place. So they put them in the cupboard, and next to the cupboard was food.
Right. The mice.
So the mice would come, and the mice would come to eat the grain, and the mice would come to eat the parchment, because parchment is organic. So therefore, they made a rule that if you put the sefer next to the grain is going to become tamei. Well, that was a way to ensure that the svarim were kept away from food items, which was a way to ensure that the parchment would not be eaten by the rodents and the other kind of parasites. They'll eat parchment, sure.
Yeah, but they smell it anyways, whether it's
mostly then close it tight. Okay.
So
However,
we're saying that a sefer made you, if a sefer, you touch the sefer,
correct,
and then you touch the
right. So then you're passive for truma.
That's what I'm saying, right?
Right. So that makes you like the equivalent of a sheni or a shlishi for makes you like for the sheni to make to tuma hatar. The hayodayim. Okay, yodayim are your hands. The Gemara is going to talk about why your hands are considered to be tamei. What does that mean, and how do you make them tahar? V'atful yom. Atful yom is the person who went to the mikveh, who the sun did not yet go down. Right, still waiting for that time. He is considered, if he touches something, makes it possible for truma. These are all gzeros. The ochlim v'akelim shenitmu b'mashkim. This is a food which became tamei with water or the other liquids, and those items will also. The Gemara will explain what that means. V'akelim v'akelim shenitmu b'mashkim. They came into contact with water. Okay.
So does that mean, just that last one, does that mean that this kelim, if they touch truma, or if you touch the kelim and so it's not clear yet.
So what they're really concerned about is that if you may be eating and drinking at the same time, so if the ochel became tamei from the mashkim, because if you eat, you're probably going to drink, or if you drink, you're probably going to eat. Right. So therefore, you may come to mix them together, and you may come to take truma at the same time. So each of these items is going to have a specific reason why it is going to be considered a gzeira or takana that would become tamei midrabanan. Because really, each of these items should not make truma tamei.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So that takes us down to the actual item itself, right? Okay, so that's 2 lines at the bottom. That is the actual list of 10 items here. Okay, and we're going to kind of do one by one of the 10 starting next week. Now, I think you'll say it's easier trying to take one by one because you only have to deal with the premises for each item as you go through it. And some of the items are combined, but this is probably, I think, the hardest part, just getting used to this kind of nomenclature. And the fact that you'll see that Av and Rishon can become changed from really Rishon to Sheni, right? It gets the recipient, the giver. Well, but keep the sheet with you, okay? Because we'll make sure that you don't lose it. We'll stop here and we'll pick up again next week, okay? Okay.
Rabbi, I keep every